I guess I can say stuff.
So why did you raise your hand just now?
I mean, I have things to say. I can say things. Okay, here we go. It was more to have fun. I was raising out of fun.
Have you had enough fun?
Yeah, I've had a great time.
All right.
Well, I got something to say. Okay, sorry. Okay. So I guess one thing that I was going to say is, like, when I was 15, I cut myself and I went deaf in my left ear. And sometimes I feel like it's like holding me back from feeling really great because I want to hear out of my left ear again. It feels kind of like this, like, constant negativity, but only when I focus on it, I guess. So I guess the answer is to not focus on it.
Well, you're making a good point because you're talking about something that is sort of always present. But if you can, here's the thing we really want you to hear. If you can get good at focusing around that, you can get good at focusing around anything. And that experience, which seems like a disadvantage, can turn into the greatest advantage of your experience because focusing is everything.
Yeah, okay, that was a great. Second one is like, okay, thoughts, right? Let's say I have like paranoid thoughts sometimes, right? And I guess it's more of like being...
It's logical when you have things that you really desire, and your desire for well-being is very strong as yours is. It's logical that the absence of that would feel awful. In other words, that paranoia is strong momentum about things that are opposite of who you really are and what you really want. Here's the easiest way to hear this. If someone that you don't know were to call you on the telephone and say, "Hello, you don't know me. I'm just calling to let you know that I'm not ever going to call you again," you wouldn't have any paranoia over that. You wouldn't have any strong...
Maybe a little. That would just be kind of weird. I'd be like, all right, why is this person calling?
But you wouldn't... There's no hope for you. But if someone that you cared about called and said that to you, you'd have a very strong reaction to that. And so what we're getting at is when you have a strong reaction to something, what it always means is on the other side of that is something that really matters to you.
Yes.
And so that's guidance that's letting you know that you would serve yourself well by focusing on the wanted end of the stick rather than on the absence of what's wanted end of the stick.
Yeah, basically, like recently I've really started to care about life a lot. Where when I was younger, I didn't really care as much. So it's like the more I care...
But you see, we want to get that in the proper perspective because when you were younger, it isn't that you didn't care. It's that you didn't resist it and feel the discord of resisting it. This is really an important distinction because to you, when negative emotion is present, you're translating that to mean, I really care about this. But when you were younger, you really cared about life. You just hadn't picked up enough stuff on your physical trail to get in the way of the wonderful life that you were living. Can you hear that distinction?
Yeah. Kind of.
Well, it matters a lot. When I was younger, what did you say when I was younger?
When I was younger, I just kind of like, it didn't, I just kind of, like now it's like I have things that I want in life.
But
when I was younger, I was just like, whatever.
But when you were younger, you weren't contradicting. In other words, this is what we're talking about.
Okay.
If you sort of want something and you're not resisting it, then you sort of feel fine. If you really want something and you're resisting it, you feel terrible. If you don't want it at all and you're not getting it, you don't care. And so the more life experience you live, the more you put into your vortex. That's really what this conversation is about. The more you vibrationally become. And the more you vibrationally become, then the greater the risk of not feeling good there is.
Yeah.
The more you want, then the more focusing in opposition to it is going to feel uncomfortable. It's like a tug of war. And so we just want to say to you that when you were younger, you did have desires, but you also had less resistance when you were younger. And so this conversation is more about the resistance that you've picked up on your physical trail than it is the presence or absence of desire.
Yeah, because I've taken...
You had powerful wanting when you were born. You came with powerful wanting. You just haven't learned how to resist it when you were younger. And most people learn how to resist it the longer they are in their physical bodies. That's why you're here. We're wanting to help you to no longer resist it, but allow it, get into the receiving mode. Yeah. Make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I've written this like really incredible book. I've taken the things of like the darkness that people, the things that in the world that are like scary to people, but I've kind of added like your perspective to them all in this like novel. And I think it's amazing and incredible, and I'm really proud of myself for it. I feel like I did a really great job, and I'm still doing it, it's still unfolding. But sometimes like I get afraid that I'm tapping into people's fear too much, and they're going to get mad at me for it. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like that I'm like I get really where I'm like, I don't know if I should say this. What if that hurts someone's feelings? That's why I love you, because everything you say, even if it's kind of like, maybe not, I mean, it's amazing, but it's like you really put people in their place in a loving way.
We're not trying to please you.
Yeah.
We're not trying to please you from your physical format. We are wanting to harmonize with you from your non-physical format. And so we have taken what you think of what we say out of the equation altogether. But that doesn't mean that we are not caring about you. It is for that reason that we do care about you, that we are focusing upon who you really are, not who you are being in any moment. For example, what is an example of something that is in the book that is something that...
Well, it's called The Bisexual Christian Suburban Failure Enlightening Bipolar Blues.
Yeah, they're going to nail you up. And so.
But they're really not. That was a joke, right?
That was a joke.
Okay, good.
That was a joke. So, anytime you feel fear, just remember that that's you focusing on something that your inner being is focusing on exactly the same thing and feeling differently about. And so, think of how you felt in the receiving mode of that.
And the writing of it feels amazing.
And think about how different you feel when you are in the format that you were just in, where you're...
It feels bad, scary.
And so, what does that tell you?
That I shouldn't go into that mode.
That there's no productivity from it, and there's no value from it, and your guidance is clearly letting you know, you, of all people, can feel the difference between the receiving mode and the paranoid mode. There are two very different vibrational frequencies. We were having fun with our friend earlier. The answer to the question, first you have to understand where the question is coming from. In other words, if your question is, do I have reason to worry about this book? We want to say to you, a better question is, what is worry? Not, is this something to worry about? What is worry? Because anything that you feel worried about, if we were standing in your physical shoes, we wouldn't be thinking about. We wouldn't be thinking about it. It is the thought about it that is causing the discord.
It's like sometimes the worry seems safe, which I guess is kind of insane, right? It like seems safe. It's like...
Basically insane.
Yeah.
If worry feels safe, it's because worry feels normal. And that's the difference between being young and open and allowing, and being older and being more guarded. If you train yourself into worry feeling normal, then you have been muting your own guidance system, and you're not using it in that mastery effective way.
You're right, yeah.
You know how whatever you did in order to get into the receiving mode, in order to receive the book in the way that you did, you want to stay in that receiving mode as you're now thinking about the next steps about it.
Yeah.
So how does that translate into behavior or action or focus? What does that mean to you?
Well, when I was younger, I always felt like I was going to write the greatest novel of all time for some reason. I always felt like that. And it wasn't. And it was always like not good, but I always thought it was. But it got to the point where now it's like really amazing, if that makes sense. So I feel like that, always feeling that everything's going to work out. And maybe at first it doesn't work out like I wanted it, or like as good as, but it gets there.
Well, we want you to focus on the relationship between you and your inner being. And we want you to, for a little while, especially now, to focus upon how your inner being feels. In other words, just ask yourself that question often. You can ask your inner being, you can ask Abraham, whatever focus that you want to give it. How do you feel about what I've written here. Well, you just said it. I feel like it's amazing. Well, we do too. So then you ask the question, what do you feel about the world negatively responding to this? And first of all, when you focus in that way, you can't receive us. This is a really important conversation to have. You're following us on the subject of allowing vibration to turn to thoughts and thoughts to turn to things. That process of things is becoming clearer and clearer to everyone, and you are getting the sense of that. So as this vibration is turning to a thought, and this thought is turning to a thing, as you are approaching the subject of it, and you are thinking about this book that has already become a thing, now you have a whole other beginning. In other words, the way the book became is one subject, but what happens with the book next is another subject. And so you have to do the same things in order to receive about that as you did in order to receive the book to begin with. You get what we're talking about?
Yeah, because there's more negative momentum in that, because I have this doubt like, oh, people aren't going to like it, or, it's too much for people, and all this kind of weirdness in my head.
So when you have thoughts like that you are discounting, in other words, you're calling it weirdness in your head, when you have thoughts like that, the question that we want to put to you, and you'll be able to answer it easily, is where are those thoughts coming from? Are those thoughts coming from the same place that the book itself came from?
No.
So where are those thoughts coming from? They're coming from things that you've picked up along your physical trail. And so you have a choice of refocusing to the same vibration where you got the book to receive what to do next with it, or you can be lazy about it and just we mean that lovingly, but it is easier or more comfortable. Those were your words to us. It's sort of comforting to think the thoughts that you've always been thinking. But it isn't comfortable anymore, is it?
No.
And so when something's not comfortable, what is the path of least resistance? How do you bring yourself into comfort from a place of discomfort?
Lots of different ways.
But what is the primary way? If the stove is hot,
don't touch it.
Or if you're already touching it, what do? You withdraw from it. You remove yourself from what is uncomfortable.
It's like the moment I know the stove's hot, boom. That's kind of the mastery, right? Like really knowing.
The thing is, with the stove being hot, you know it because it's a stove and it might be hot. And so I'm approaching it with attention. I'm looking to see if the knob is on or off, or if there is a flame. In other words, you're using some reason about it. You're not just saying, is this stove hot? So is it difficult to do that with other things? In other words, don't you know what thoughts are likely to lead you to a place of discomfort more and more?
Yes.
And so doesn't it become increasingly easy to guide your thoughts toward what feels better?
Yes.
Frequently, Esther will say right out loud to herself, don't go there. As she starts to go there, because something has made that available to her, and she'll start to go there, and then she'll say to herself, don't go there. Don't go there. In other words, don't put your hand on this stove that has burned you before. Don't go to that place that has been uncomfortable before. But since you have an active vibration at all times, not going someplace, unless you're meditating or unless you're asleep, you can't just turn your point of attraction off. So if you're fully focused and functioning, what's the way that you don't go there?
You take your attention away from it.
But what does that mean? Withdrawing your attention from one thing when you are awake and conscious, what does that mean in practical terms? You have to give your attention to something else.
Go to a thought that feels better.
Yes, because you cannot just make your vibration cease to be. You can redirect it if it's in the early enough stages. If there's a lot of momentum about it, then you have to take more drastic actions like go to sleep for a while. Or if you're good at meditating, then get into that meditative state. But the logical thing to do, because you care about how you feel, directing your thoughts to what feels better.